It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccer Files Canada. Welcome to Series 25, looking at the players of Euro 2024. This episode is looking at the players of Germany. Here we go. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccer Files Canada. I'm Kevin and this is Series 25 on the players of the 2024 Euro Cup. This episode covers Germany's players. We're doing this mediacast in two parts. Part one is a look at the candidates for the squad and their likelihood of making it. That's this one. We examine the participation of players in games over the recent period and categorize them based on their likelihood of making the squad. Part two will come out when the squad lists are released and the final squad selected. At that time, we'll go back over our list and see who made it and who didn't. And we'll also cover things like injuries and surprise selections. So this episode will have three parts. Section one, where we look at some general information on the team. Section two, where we cover the main candidates in each position. And section three, where we summarize and conclude. And just before we begin, we're going to try something a little different here to make the podcast a bit shorter and more efficient. So we actually did Germany and a lot of the teams appearing in the Euro Cup. We did them for the 2002 World Cup. Those media casts turned out to be quite long because we went into detail on the players' histories. So this time we're just going to cover the recent history, kind of a focus on the recent. And but if you are interested in the longer histories of the players, you will find more details in the World Cup 2022 media cast, which are still available on YouTube and at captivate.fm. You can see our websites in the show notes or on the screen if you're looking at the YouTube. Okay, well, we're ready to begin, and let's begin with some general information on Germany's squad. We have been doing retirements, but we're going to skip that and leave that for when we go over the players because we can mention it there. So let's move on to club affiliation, and we don't want to go into the weeds too much on the teams here, but suffice to say that Germany has top club affiliations. So most of them do play in Germany, and they're the top clubs Bayern Munich and Borussia Dortmund. Several other German clubs are represented there. When they play outside of Germany, it's mostly in England and Spain, and it's top clubs in those countries, or some secondary clubs such as Brighton or Fulham. And just a couple other than that, Monaco in France and Milan in Spain. So kind of top or secondary clubs there. There is the odd player who plays for the weaker German teams, but we'll make mention of those because we're gonna give the club the last one or two clubs that the players played for. Moving on, let's look at their talk about their recent games a little bit. What we're doing here is actually looking at the period that we're examining for the participation of the players so that we can categorize them. So, but we should say that it was quite interesting that Germany played no qualifying games for this tournament. In the past, it used to be that the hosts and the defending champions automatically received a bye into the tournament. And that's still true of the host, but even sometimes the hosts want to go through a qualifying tournament, and defending champions do too, because it's a way of developing the team. So I believe this started happening after France did poorly in the 2002 World Cup as defending champions, and perhaps realized that they needed the qualification process to work on the team. So a bit surprising then that Germany played no qualifying games for this tournament. They don't have to because they're host, but it was really a series of friendlies. They have played 13 friendlies since the World Cup in 2022, and that covers all their games in 2023 and in March 2024. Okay, let's move on to talk about formations. So Germany went with a 4-2-3-1. We'll put that up as their usual formation here because that's what it's going to be, a 4-2-3-1. However, after the World, and that was all 3 games of the World Cup, of course, they got knocked out at the group stage. After the World Cup, of course, they had a new manager who we'll introduce shortly. And they did quite a bit of experimentation, especially in the first half of the period that we're talking about. So they used 4 different formations in the first 4 games, but eventually seemed to come back to the 4-2-3-1, which they used for 6 of the last 8 games. So that is the situation with their formations. And our discussion will be kind of guided by that formation. Finally, we'll just take a look at their upcoming games. So they have 2 friendlies scheduled. One is in June, or both of them in June, of course. One is on June 3rd, 2024, and that is at home to Ukraine. Of course, they'll be playing their warm-up games at home, being the host of the tournament. And the other one is on June 7th against Greece at home. And I'm just checking to see if there's any changes to that. And there isn't. Most teams are playing those 2 warm-up games, so they can further refine their team there. And let's begin by moving on to section 2 and our look at the players. Let's begin with the manager, and we'll take the situation back to Joachim Löw. He was the manager for such a long time, from 2006 to 2021. But in June 2021, gave up as the manager, and it was Hansi Flick who came in after him to manage the team through the 2022 World Cup. Hansi Flick remained as manager from 2021 to September 2023. So survived for a while after their dismal performance in the 2022 World Cup, exiting at the group stage there, but eventually was released. Rudi Völler took over as a caretaker manager. He's actually the director of football for the German team. He took over for just a short time in September 2023, just a couple of weeks there, until they selected their new manager, Julian Nagelsmann. So Julian Nagelsmann from 2023. In September. So Julian Nagelsmann, this will be his first tournament and is his first national team. So became manager in 2023, and prior to that he was manager of Bayern Munich for 2 years, and a very successful Leipzig in Germany for 2 years, and in Hoffenheim in Germany from 2016 to 19. So that is it. He began his managing career in 2016. He was a professional player in Germany from 2006 to 2008. That doesn't sound right. Just oh yes, that is right. He earned no international caps, and yeah, that short career is because he retired at just 20 years of age due to persistent injuries. So Julian Nagelsmann leading Germany through this cup, and they will certainly hope to do better than being knocked out at the group stage. Let's go to goalkeepers, and we begin just by listing the candidates and their likelihood, and then we'll go back and give more information, especially for the main candidates. So Marc-Andre ter Stegen, a definite candidate. Bernd Leno, a likely candidate. Oliver Baumann, also a likely candidate. Kevin Trapp, a possible candidate. That may be a surprise to some, not up on the recent information. Janis Blaswich, possible also, probably less likely than Trapp though. And here we get to one of our retired players, is Manuel Neuer, off the team. So I'll just deal with him quickly. Again, we could go through a long history with him. He still is playing club soccer for Bayern Munich. Been with them since 2011, but last played for the national team in the 2022 World Cup. So he retires with 117 caps, and he is currently 38 years old. So, sorry, I just need to get my little document out here. Yes, 38 years old. So Manuel Neuer won't be part of this cup. Let's go back to the players that likely will be. So we start with definite candidate Marc-Andre ter Stegen. He's been with Germany since 2012. He has 40 caps and is 32 years old. And he's played for Barcelona in Spain since 2014. So coming up on 10 years with them there. So he was not part of Euro 2020. He was part of tournaments before that. But he was out with a knee problem, actually surgery on his knee problem for Euro 2020. But he was part of the 2022 World Cup squad, although he didn't see any field time. Since Neuer's retirement, though, he has started 10 of their 13 games, and he was on the bench for one and injured for two others there. So Marc-Andre ter Stegen, the only definite candidate here, but two likely candidates. The first is Bernd Leno. Bernd Leno has been with the team since 2016, but only has 9 caps for them. He's 32 years old, and he plays for Fulham in England since 2022. He moved from Arsenal, where he was for 4 years before that. He too has been on squads. Not part of the World Cup 2018 or 2022 squads, but he was on the bench for Euro 2020. Bernd Leno has not started any of their 13 games since the World Cup, but he was on the bench for 9 of them, injured for 2 and not selected for 2 others. Okay, the other possible candidate, likely candidate is Oliver Baumann. He is 34 years old, but has no caps for Germany and has not been part of any tournament since being with the team. He plays for Hoffenheim in Germany and has done so since 2014. And he returned after an absence in September 2023. He came back. And still, as we saw, hasn't earned his first cap, but he was on the bench for the last 8 matches, so making a decent bid there to be a backup keeper here. Let's go to the 2 possible candidates, and Kevin Trapp. Kevin Trapp has been with Germany since 2017. He has 9 caps and is 33 years old and is in his second stint now with Eintracht Frankfurt since 2019. He was with Paris Saint-Germain in France for 4 years before that. And he has been part of tournaments over the years. Recently, he started 3 of their 13 games since the World Cup, and he was on the bench for 8. However, he was not selected for the last 2 matches, so that pushes him down to just a possible candidate here because we wonder what's going on with that. And of course, we'll come back to that in the summary of the position, which we'll do soon, but we'll have to do it after we introduce Janis Blaswich, also a possible candidate. 33 years old, with no cap, so a bit like Oliver Baumann, both in age and his club or his lack of caps. He played for Leipzig in Germany since 2022. and first appeared on the bench just recently in November 2023 and had been on the bench for 2 games, but then not selected for the last 2 matches. So I'm almost tempted to put him down to possible but not likely. But the reason I don't is that we have seen them bringing 4 keepers, 4 goalkeepers to some of the games that they played. So it's possible that they'll do that for the Euro Cup here in 2024. All right, those are the candidates. Let's summarize the position. So it was Manuel Neuer in all 3 games of the World Cup, but those were his last games. So Ter Stegen took over, and we saw he started 10 of the games. He was on the bench for 1 and injured for 2, and it was Kevin Trapp replacing him in those 3 games. And 2 of those were as late as last November. However, Kevin Trapp was not selected for the last 2 games in March 2024. So that brings his status of backup keeper into question. Leno and Baumann were on the bench for the last 2 games there in March and have been called up fairly regularly over this period. So there is a chance that one of those 2 are coming into the backup position. And as we mentioned, they have brought 4 keepers to at least some of the games. So it could potentially be all of these goalkeepers. No, we have 5. So Janis Blaswich probably very much an outsider here. Yes, okay. Let's go on to central defense and or to the defense in general, but central defense specifically. So we do have a category for general or versatile defenders. We don't have any players that we want to put in that category here, but we could do that later on for midfielders. Anyway, I drift off topic. Let's go through the candidates. For central defenders, we have a definite candidate in Antonio Rudiger, and then a likely candidate in Jonathan Tah, and then several possible candidates: Nicolas Sula, Malik Thiaw, Waldemar Anton, and Robin Koch. And also Mats Hummels making a return. We'll talk about that. Possible but unlikely is Matthias Ginter, and I will talk about him a little bit. And we have several other possible but unlikely too: Thilo Kehrer and Nico Schlotterbeck. I won't give too many details on them. And the player who seems to be off the squad, Armel Bella Kotchap. And I'll quickly dispense with him. He was selected for the World Cup in 2022. Didn't see any action there, but that was his last appearance for the squad. So doesn't seem to be a consideration here. Let's go back and look in a bit more detail, especially at the recent history of the candidates here. Okay. Beginning with Antonio Rudiger. So Antonio Rudiger is 31 years old and has been with Germany since 2014 with 68 caps and 3 goals. And he's currently with Real Madrid in Spain since 2022 and was with Chelsea for 5 years prior to that. He's been part of every tournament since 2017. Including the World Cup in 2022, where he started and finished all 3 games. And since that time, Rudiger has started 11 of their 13 games, just the first 2 games after the World Cup that he was not selected for. So Antonio Rudiger, a definite candidate. Next is a likely candidate, Jonathan Tah. He's 28 years old and has been with Germany since 2016. 23 caps in that time and no goals. And he's been with Bayer Leverkusen in Germany from 2015. Jonathan Tah joined his first youth club when he was 4 years old. He was selected for the Euro squad in 2016. He didn't see any action there, but he hasn't been selected for any squad since then. That's 4 tournaments, including the Confederations Cup in 2017. However, he is back, returned after a 15-month absence. So he did play some games during that period, but came back after a 15-month absence in September 2023 and started all 7 of their remaining games. And yeah, there we have it. So looks to be back on the squad here, Jonathan Tom. We have him as a likely candidate. Next, we begin the first of 5 possible candidates. The first is Niklas Süle. He is 28 years old and has been with Germany since 2016 with 49 caps and 1 goal. He plays for Borussia Dortmund in Germany since 2022 and was with Bayern Munich for 5 years prior to that. Has been a part of all the tournaments since the 2017 Confederations Cup, and recently has started 3 of their 13 games. He was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 2. And not selected for 7 matches. So he wasn't selected for the first 5 games after the World Cup, and then for the last 2 matches in March 2024. So Niklas Süle, a possible candidate. Malik Thiaw is the next one. He's newer to the squad, 22 years old, and been with Germany since 2023. And has earned 3 caps in that time. He's with AC Milan in Italy since 2022 and with Schalke for 2 years prior to that. He got his first appearance on the bench just after the World Cup in March 2023 and started 2 of their 13 games. However, he was not selected for the last 4 matches, Malik Thiaw. I should say he was on the bench for 6. So he was selected for all of the matches except the last 4, mostly on the bench. Next, we have Waldemar Anton. He is also new to the team, despite being 27 years old. He got his first and only cap in 2024 and plays for Stuttgart in Germany since 2020. And Anton got his first cap, as we saw, in 2024. Didn't start either of those 2 games in March, but was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 1. Robin Koch is the 4th of 5th candidates here. He is 27 years old and has been with Germany since 2019, but just 8 caps in that time and no goals. He recently moved to Eintracht Frankfurt in Germany since 2024, but was with Leeds in England from 2020 to 2024. He actually was on loan before actually moving to Eintracht Frankfurt there. He was on the squad for the Euro 2020, just on the bench there, but not selected for the World Cup in 2022. In fact, he wasn't even a consideration because after the 2020 Euro Cup, he didn't appear at all. So Robin Koch now returned after an almost 3-year absence in March of 2024 and appeared on the bench for their 2 remaining games. So a bit, probably more of an outside chance than the other players. However, our 5th one is an interesting one. It's Mats Hummels. Mats Hummels, who is 36 years old and was with Germany since 2010, 78 caps and 5 goals. So a real veteran coming back into the team here. He's actually in his 2nd stint with Borussia Dortmund since 2019, having finished a 2nd stint with Bayern Munich in 2019. He was with them for 3 years in his 2nd stint. Been part of tournaments since the 2012 Euro Cup, has Mats Hummels. However, he was not selected for the 2022 World Cup. So So recently he returned after a more than 2 year absence and started two of their 13 games. He was on the bench for two, but not selected for 9 matches. So that includes the last two in March there. Okay, we have three possible but unlikely candidates. I do want to talk about Matthias Ginter, though. Um, he is with it. I'll give the full intro on him because, uh, well, you'll see why. He has been with the. No, hang on. I'm going to start with his age. I'm losing my thread here. He's 30 years old and has been with Germany since 2014, with 51 caps and 2 goals, and was part of all the tournaments from the 2014 World Cup to the 2022 World Cup, except Euro 2016. He wasn't selected for that squad. Recently, he started the first 3 games of this period. So he was on the World Cup squad and started 3 games. Then he was on the bench for the next 2, and then not selected for the 6 matches after that. And for the 2 matches in March, he was out injured. So he is currently an injury risk since late March. He had a tendon problem and then tendon surgery, and he is listed as unavailable until, I'm just going to make sure because I think the note I wrote is incorrect, unavailable until June 30th. So that would probably put him out of the cup, but perhaps there's an outside chance of him coming back. Yeah, which is why I wanted to introduce him. However, the other candidates I'll give a briefer information on. Thilo Kehrer with West Ham in England was part of the World Cup squad in 2022, and he started 2 of their 13 games here in this period, but was not selected for the last 8 matches. So we have him as possible but unlikely. Nico Schlotterbeck. He's with Borussia Dortmund in Germany, and he actually started in World Cup 2022, but lost his starting position after game 1. He since started 3 of their games after the World Cup, but here too, not selected for the last 6 matches. So both of those seem to be off the team. But actually, given the uncertainty that we're going to see over the course of this media cast, there is a chance of them coming back. Okay, that's a lot of candidates we've dealt with, and that's partly because there are 2 and even sometimes 3 central defenders for Germany. So we're kind of covering 2 positions at the same time. And let me finish with a summary of the central defense position. Rudiger and Schlotterbeck were the pairing in the first game of the World Cup, and then Rudiger and Sula in the last 2. For 9 of the 13 games since the World Cup, they have had 4 at the back, so that means 2 central defenders. But in 4 of the games, there were 3 at the back, so 3 central defenders, with the left and right defenders pushing up to the wing, left and right wing. So a lot of experimentation in the first half of the period after the World Cup. And almost everyone that we've mentioned here in our long list was used, including some of the possible but unlikely candidates here. However, about halfway through, it settled into Rudiger as a definite starter with a partner, or sometimes with 2 partners. And a variety of candidates there. Defensive midfielder Emre Can even playing as a central defender once. After a little while, that partner with Rudiger became Sula in a 2-man central defense, and then became Jonathan Tah for the last several games. However, Mats Hummels did pop up in 2 games there. But going into the tournament here, that the pairing in March, I just want to make sure of this, but the pairing in March was Rudiger and Jonathan Tah in a two-man central defense. And I'm just going to make sure I'm saying the right thing there. Good for me, I got it right. Okay, so Tah and Rudiger, but things have been so unsettled that it wouldn't be a surprise to see that changing in the friendlies in June and then going into the Cup. Okay, let's move on to our next position, left back. And we have two likely candidates, no definite candidates here, but David Raum is a likely candidate, and Maximilian Mittelstadt, interesting one, a newcomer, also a likely candidate. We also have Robin Gosens, who is a possible but unlikely candidate, and we have Christian Gunter, seemingly off the squad, and I'll just deal with him quickly. Last appeared for the team in March of 2023, so shortly after the World Cup, but not for the last year. Christian Gunter. So let's look at the main candidates here. David Raum has been with Germany since I'll give his age first. He's 26 years old and has been with the national team since 2021 with 20 caps and no goals. And Raum plays for Leipzig in Germany since 2022 and Hoffenheim for a year before that. He was part of the World Cup in 2022 and he actually started all 3 games there as the left back. Since then, he started the first 3 of the 13 games after the World Cup. Then he was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 6 and not selected for 2 others. So he's still usually called up, but is no longer the starter. Our next candidate is Maximilian Mittelstadt, and he is a newcomer. He's 27 years old, though, so no spring chicken, but he got his first cap in March of 2024 here, so he has 2 caps and he even managed to score in one of those games. And he plays for Stuttgart in Germany since 2023 and Hertha Berlin for a long time before that. From 2015. So, as we saw, he got his first cap in March of 2022, started both games, and as we said, even scored a goal. So, Maximilian Mittelstadt making a bid for the starting position. And finally, we have Robin Gosens as the possible but unlikely candidate. I won't go into too much detail. He was part of Euro 2020, but not selected for the World Cup in 2022, and recently kind of took a step down in his club affiliation. He had been with Inter Milan since 2022, and then recently moved down to Union Berlin in Germany, not one of the bigger teams in Germany. So also took a step down in his national team. Did start 3 of their 13 games since the start of the World Cup there, but did not appear in the last 4 matches. So I wouldn't say seemingly off the squad yet, but we do have him as possible, but unlikely. Let's look at the position of left back and see what's happened. We did see that David Raum started all 3 games of the Cup, so he was pretty entrenched in that position, and that continued for the first 3 games of the period. But then experimentation began, and all sorts of players came in. The right back, Heinrichs, who we'll meet soon, and Robin Gosens, who we saw here. Both of those started more than once. More recently, the centre-back Schlotterbeck and the attacking midfielder Kai Havertz, were also used. Kai Havertz twice. When Kai Havertz was used, though, the position was basically the left defender moving up to a left wing position. So probably there with the 3-man defense was when Havertz was playing. Anyway, the last 2 games, as we saw, had newcomer Mittelstadt in the position. However, that's just 2 games, and I wonder if that will be the final decision. David Rom has been around enough to kind of reclaim the position there, so it'll be interesting to see what they do in the friendlies. And this position, like many others we saw in central defence, really don't seem decided. We do see kind of a change for the March 2024 games, but we don't know if those changes will stick. Anyway, we won't speculate too much. We will move on to oh, my graphics are all wrong here. I just realized I put central defenders where left backs was supposed to be. I can actually finish that easy. I put left backs where right backs are supposed to be, and now we're moving on to right backs here. So I'm just fixing up the graphics for our YouTube watchers and hope that didn't confuse things too much. Let's look at right backs there. And we have here, we're going to put Joshua Kimmich here. We could put him as a defensive midfielder, and I've seen various websites have him as an attacking midfielder or a right winger. My default has him as a right winger, but I don't agree. Anyway, at least over the current period, right back is as good a place to put him as defensive midfielder. So Joshua Kimmich we'll deal with here as a right back, and he is a definite candidate. Benjamin Heinrichs, who we mentioned because we saw him once on the left, is a likely candidate. And then 2 players are possible but unlikely. The first is Lucas Klostermans, and the second is Marius Wolf. And I will talk about those because they did play a role over this period. Let's go, though, to our main candidate, or our definite candidate, Joshua Kimmich. He is 29 years old now and has been with Germany since 2016 with 84 caps and 6 goals. He's been part of every tournament since the 2016 Euro Cup, and over the recent period started 8 of their 13 games, subbed in for 2, on the bench for 1, and ill for 2 others. So always selected, even if he didn't always start. And he's only played, I think, 4 times as a right back here. Plays equally as much as a defensive midfielder, and I think in 1 game was even kind of a semi-attacking midfielder. So anyway, Joshua Kimmich's a definite candidate, not necessarily, though, as the right back. Our likely candidate is Benjamin Henrichs, and he's 27 years old, been with Germany since 2016, but only 14 caps in that time and no goals. He plays for Leipzig in Germany since 2021 and was with Monaco in the French league prior to that. And he actually was selected for the Confederations Cup in 2017. That was a bit of a B team there. They called it the Next Generation team, which is a way of making B team players feel better about the fact that they're not on the A team. And even at that, Benjamin Henrichs was a substitute, just subbing in to game 3 there. Oh no, he went on to start game 4. However, he hasn't been selected for a squad since then. And that was a bit of a surprise prior to the World Cup because he was being selected regularly before the 2022 World Cup. But anyway, in the period we're talking about, after the World Cup, he started 3 of their 13 games, Benjamin Henrichs, and he was subbed in for 4 and on the bench for 2. However, he was not selected for the last 2 matches, so always a bit foreboding when you're not called up just before the Cup. So we'll have to see. We have him as a likely candidate here, but perhaps that's a bit too generous. Anyway, we'll leave it at that for now and maybe recode him later. Let's take a quick look at Lucas Klosterman. He's been with the team. No, I won't give that biographical information. I'll just say he was part of Euro 2020 and 2022 World Cup, on the squad for both, but only saw time on the field as a substitute in the World Cup in 2022. He hadn't started any of their games since the World Cup and was just subbed in for one. But it's partly injuries. He was out with 2 separate injuries for 4 games and then not selected for 8 others. But we do think there's a chance of him making a comeback because he was selected for the last 2 tournaments. Not true of Marius Wolf. He's a bit of a different story, a newcomer to the squad since 2023, but he has 5 caps in that time. So over the period we're talking about, he started 4 of their games and subbed in for 1. However, after that good start, he wasn't selected for the last 8 matches, just like Klosterman. So both of those players still possible, but unlikely. And you may have already gotten the sense that there's really no candidate playing a lot of games as right back. So the position, even in the World Cup, was kind of up in the air. In the World Cup, we saw 3 different players in the position. That was central defender Sula in game 1, central defender Kerrer in game 2, and then Joshua Kimmich, who was coded as a right winger. He was in the past a right back, but more recently in his career, he's been moving upfield a bit. I think of him kind of as a defensive midfielder now. Anyway, moving on, after the World Cup, it was Marius Wolf, used for I think 3 or 4 games there, and after that, it became experimental. I should be more specific so that it looks like I know what I'm talking about. It was 4 games that Marius Wolf was used before it became experimental, with several players tried out for 1 game, and Heinrichs was one of these. Central defender Jonathan Tah was used twice, and Kimmich was used 4 times, including in the last 2 games. So perhaps Kimmich is moving back to the right back position, and that is why we kind of put him here, because it seems most correct over the last period. So right back very much up in the air. Joshua Kimmich looking like the most likely candidate right now. Okay, let's move to midfielders. And we're kind of reorganizing the field a little bit. We're going to do defensive midfielders here. We do have a category for general or versatile midfielders, and we really do have a couple of these on Germany. Gundogan comes to mind, sometimes playing as a defensive midfielder, sometimes as an attacking midfielder, and a couple of other players, Kimmich and stuff, could be put into this category. And especially on the offense, I'll just say it now, so that you're prepared, especially on the attacking side. It's not so much back and forth, defensive and offensive, but right to left. So we have a lot of switching of positions between right, central, and left attacking midfielders. So just be warned when you hear the same name over several positions when we get there. But we're getting ahead of ourselves, and let's go to look at the defensive midfielders. We will put defensive midfielders and central midfielders in the same batch here. So we could have Joshua Kimmich here because he did play as a defensive midfielder for some games. You'll hear his name in the summary, but we did put him or deal with him as a right back. So our first candidate then becomes Robert Andrich as a likely candidate. And then we have Emre Can as a possible candidate, and Alexander Pavlovich as a possible, as a seemingly off the squad. And I'll deal with him quickly here. He is actually a young player, just 19 years old, with no caps for Germany. He plays for Bayern Munich, and he has yet to earn his first cap. But he was called up for the March 2024 games either one or both of them, but he reported in as injured. So perhaps will come into play. I think I will put him at the possible but unlikely level there, because uh, teams sometimes do bring young players like this to the cup. But let's talk about the main candidates. Robert Andrich, the likely candidate, is 29 years old and has been with the team since 2023. So a bit of a late bloomer for them, with just 3 caps and no goals. He plays for Bayer Leverkusen in Germany since 2021. And Union Berlin before that, including his first appearance on the bench in October 2023. He had started both of the last 2 games there, and he was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 3 others. So called up for the last 6 and a starter in the last 2 games. We're going to see this throughout the media cast, that they used the same players for the last 2 games in March, which were a bit of a deviation from what they had done before that. So Robert Andrich being a prime example of that, coming in out of the cold and starting the 2 games in March. So we have to put him as a likely candidate, even though we're not sure those March changes will stick. Next, we have Emre Can. He's 30 years old now and has been with Germany since 2015. 43 caps on 1 goal, and with Borussia Dortmund in Germany since 2020, and Juventus in Italy before that. And Emre Can has been part of tournaments since the 2016 Euro Cup, but really struggled to kind of insert himself fully into the squad. Was kind of a substitute in 3 tournaments, but never selected for the World Cup. So in 2018 and 22, he was not part of their squads. However, he's still around and started 5 of their 13 games since the 2022 World Cup. But not selected for 4 matches, and not selected for the last 2 matches. So we put him as a possible candidate here, Emre Can. So let's move on to the no, that is it, because we dealt with Alexander Pavlovich, the newcomer. And so, however, we won't do the summary of the position, because we're going to do that together with the defensive and central midfielders. Okay, at this point, I'm going to do an editing cut, just because some of the graphics were wrong. I've now corrected them. So we're moving on from defensive midfielders to central midfielders. And our first candidate is the definite candidate, İlkay Gündoğan. He is the captain of the team. And we have a likely candidate in Pascal Gross. And a possible candidate in Leon Goretzka. Here. Also possible is Jonas Hoffman, who might be coded actually as a right winger, but we're putting him here as a central midfielder. Toni Kroos, also possible, and then 2 candidates who are possible but unlikely, and I'll deal with them right away here. The first one is Felix Nemecha. And he got his first cap in 2023, but he wasn't selected for the last 6 games. So he's with Borussia Dortmund, but unlikely for this tournament. Perhaps down the road, because he's 24 years old. The other one is Grisha Promel, and he got an appearance on the bench in November of 2023 there. Was on the bench for 2 games and then not selected for the last 2 matches. So there is a possibility of either of those players coming in, but at this point they look unlikely. So let's go back over the candidates here and begin with İlkay Gündoğan. again, we said he could be a versatile midfielder because he's played both defensively and at the attacking end of the field. Gundogan is 33 years old and he's been with Germany since 2011, 75 caps and 18 goals. He recently, or not recently, but moved to Barcelona in Spain in 2023, having been with Manchester City in England for 7 years before that. Was not actually part of several of the squads after joining the team. He was part of Euro 2012, but then his next tournament was the World Cup in 2018. But he's been consistently part of the squad since then. And in the recent period has started 9 of their 13 games, was on the bench for 1. And the 3 games he missed were the first 3 games after the World Cup. There. So Ilkay Gundogan looking like a definite candidate. We don't really think those 3 games after the World Cup mean much. Okay, Pascal Gross is our likely candidate, one of the few players really on the squad who has no tournament experience. Despite being 33 years old, he got his first cap in 2023 and has 5 caps for the national team. He plays for Brighton in England and has done so since 2017. So Gross got his first cap in September 2023 and started 2 of their remaining 8 games. But he was always selected. He was subbed in for 3 and on the bench for the other 3 there. So consistently being called up for the last 8 games. Pascal Gross looking like a likely candidate here. Next is Leon Goretzka. He's a real veteran with the team. He's 29 years old and has been with them since 2014 with 57 caps and 14 goals. He plays for Bayern Munich in Germany since 2018 and has been part of every tournament since the 2017 World Cup. The 2017 Confederations Cup. So he did miss the first 2 tournaments after joining the team, but then was selected all the time. In the recent period, he started 4 of their 13 games since the 2022 World Cup and was subbed in for 5, but not selected for 4 matches, including the last 2. And so perhaps we're a little bit harsh putting him as a possible candidate, but again, when they miss matches in the lead up to a tournament, it's a bit of a worrying sign. Jonas Hoffman, also a possible candidate, is 31 years old, also a latecomer to the national team. He joined in 2020, but has 23 caps and 4 goals. So he was part of the last 2 tournaments, Euro 2020 and the World Cup, a substitute in both of those tournaments. Actually didn't see any field time in Euro 2020, but got on the pitch twice in the World Cup there. And he has since started only 1 of their games since then, but he was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 5. However, he missed 4 matches, and those include the last 2 matches. So again, we have him as a possible candidate when they miss the games leading up to the Cup. Jonas Hoffman, our second possible candidate. The third and last one is Toni Kroos. He's a veteran with the team, 34 years old since 2010, and 108 caps for the national team and 17 goals. He's been with Real Madrid in Spain since 2014 and was with Bayern Munich for 7 years before that. So he's been part of every tournament since the 2010 World Cup, except for that 2017 Confederations Cup. So, of course, he was not part of the World Cup in 2022. He had last appeared for the national team in the 2020 Euro Cup, and it looked like he was retiring. In fact, he announced his retirement shortly after the Euro Cup. However, Julian Nagelsmann urged him to come back to the squad, and so he did come back for both of their games in March of 2024. So coming back to the squad, and now I imagine because the manager invited him back specifically, that he is probably a little more than a possible candidate, and especially given his experience, we will probably put him as a likely candidate. But objectively, he has just been back for 2 games and wasn't part of the World Cup squad. So we're going to leave him as a possible candidate there. And then we looked at the 2 possible but unlikely candidates, Nemecha and Prommel. And now we are ready to summarize the position of the defensive end of midfielders, defensive and central midfielders. So despite all of their formation experiments, especially in the 6 games or so after the World Cup, this position has usually remained as two players, 2 either defensive or central midfielders. In the World Cup, it was Kimmich, Gundogan, and Goretzka rotated there. I think each of them were seen there twice. And to simplify a complex matter since, those 3 basically remained, with Emre Can sometimes joining the rotation. Toward the end, Pascal Gross made a couple of appearances, but then for the last 2 games, it suddenly changed to newcomers, Cruz coming back to the team, and Andrich just getting his first no, those weren't his first caps, but his first starts for the team. So a big change there right at the end. And so we're left scratching our heads as to what it's going to look like in the friendlies and in the cup in this position. Wow. So Germany seem very kind of undecided in their squad here. Okay, we do have some players coded as right midfielders or left midfielders, but actually not only for Germany, but for other teams, those positions are going kind of out of fashion, and I'm reorganizing too. Right midfielders and left midfielders really only exist in a 4-3-3 formation, and otherwise it's kind of wingers or attacking midfielders. So basically, we had a few players coded as right and left midfielders, but we've kind of moved them to positions that they've really been playing in a bit more. So we're kind of reorganizing into forward midfielders here. So we have left attacking midfielder, right attacking, and central attacking midfielder, which they don't always use. And that's the way we're going to organize things. So we begin with the left attacking midfielders, and this could mean left wingers or even left forwards sometimes. We're combining all of those positions. So think of it as the upper left quadrant of the field. And here we have a definite candidate in Florian Wirtz. He is actually coded as an attacking midfielder, but we're moving him over here. And we also are dealing with Jamal Musiala here. He's a likely candidate. However, I should preface, or I did actually earlier, that these players do move from left to right to central, so you will see their names popping up. We're just putting them in the place they seem most suitable for discussion. Okay, after Musiala, we have a possible candidate in Chris Führich, and then a player who seems to be off the squad, Jan Nicholas Best. No, I'm going to put him as a possible but unlikely. So like the player we saw before, he was first called up for the March games in 2024, but reported in as injured. So Jan Nicholas Best is in that category. He plays for Hoffenheim in Germany. And we'll introduce him perhaps a bit more later if he makes the squad. Okay, those are the candidates that we have here. Let's take a look at Florian Wirtz. No tournament experience, fairly new to the team, just 21 years old, but really inserting himself into the team since 2021. He has 16 caps and 1 goal and plays for Bayer Leverkusen in Germany since 2020. That's his first club. He was with a youth club at the end of his youth career too. And Florian Wirtz was actually um, around to be considered for Euro 2020, but was not selected. For the World Cup, he might have been selected, but he was prevented by injury. And since the World Cup, he has started 10. Get that, 10 of their 13 games, subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 1 other. So players not familiar with the German team will be surprised to see him. It looks like he's suddenly coming into the team, although that's not completely true. Next, our likely candidate, Jamal Musiala, is 21 years old, so also very young, and also a lot of experience with the club considering his age. He's been with Germany, I should say, with the national team, not club. Been with Germany since 2021 with 27 caps and 2 goals, and played for Bayern Munich in Germany since 2020. He was part of the last 2 tournaments. He was a sub in Euro 2020 and a starter in the World Cup 2022. So people may be surprised to realize he is still very young at 21 years old. However, Jamal Musiala is out with a knee injury. I'm just going to check into when that happened, but his return date is unknown. So he is an injury risk for this cup, and we'll have to wait until the update to see if there's any change in his status. But that knee injury basically began at the end of April. Well, the actual knee problem began in mid-May, but he was off the team for a few games before that. So Jamal Musiala, because he was a starter in the World Cup, will be a bit of a loss for them. Recently, he has started 6 of their 13 games. He was subbed in for 1 and has been struggling not just with the knee injury, but with 2 separate injuries. For 4 games and not selected for 2. So Jamal Musiala, we have him as a likely candidate, but an injury doubt. Finally, Chris Führich. He's listed as a forward on some sources. We have him as a left winger, and he fits in well here. He's 31 years old, but just joined the team in 2023 and has 3 caps for Germany and no goals. He plays for Stuttgart in Germany since 2021. So he got his first cap in October 2023, hasn't started any games, but subbed in for 3 and was on the bench for 1. So a possible candidate in Chris Führich. And we've dealt with Jan Nicholas Best, so that is the left attackers. I'll actually change the title there to left attacking. I'll just say left attacking because it could be a forward position as well. Let's go on to the right attackers. And same thing over here. Think of the upper right quadrant of the field. And we have moved Leroy Sané, who is coded as a right midfielder primarily, to here. And we consider him a definite candidate. And Serge Gnabry, a possible candidate, to my surprise. And again, Joshua Kimmich coded as a right winger, but we've moved him to right defense. Kevin Schade is a possible but unlikely candidate. Okay, let's talk about these players. And beginning with Leroy Sané. So Leroy Sané is 28 years old now, been with Germany since 2015 with 59 caps and 13 goals. And he's been with Bayern Munich since 2020 and Manchester City for 4 years before that. And part of tournaments since Euro 2016, that was his first tournament. He was injured for the Confederations Cup after that, despite being or after being selected for the final squad. He withdrew injured. He required an operation on his nose. And then there was much outcry about him not being selected, not making the final cup for the World Cup in 2018. But he has been selected for the two tournaments after that, although he wasn't a starter in either of them. So Serge Gnabry, sorry, what am I talking about? Leroy Sané, a definite candidate here. The reason I'm hesitating a bit here is because I'm looking into Serge Gnabry's injury, but I'll introduce him first. 28 years old and with Germany since 2016. He has 45 caps and an impressive 22 goals, so almost a 50% average there. Serge Gnabry has been with Bayern Munich since 2017. His first tournament was the 2020 Euro Cup, though, so he actually took a while to actually make it to a tournament, but he was a starter in both Euro 2020 and World Cup in 2022. He has since started 4 of their games since the World Cup, but he was out with 2 separate injuries for 5 games and not selected for the last 2 matches. So I thought he was kind of over his injuries, but it looks like that's not the case. And he's really struggled with injuries over the past year. But I do see that he was back playing in May, so his injury concern seems to be not a factor. And yeah, because initially I had a note saying he was not due back until July 15th, but here he is. Here he is seemingly fit and ready to play. So we will leave him as a possible candidate, but of course he'd probably move up given if he's over his injury. So Serge Gnabry will follow up on in part 2 of the podcast. Finally, Kevin Schade has been with Germany since 2023 with 3 caps, but just a possible but unlikely candidate. He's with Brentford in England, and he got his first cap in March of 2023, so right after the World Cup there. Was subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 1, but not selected or actually injured for the last 6 matches. So he too is an injury concern and unlikely to be on the squad. So that's it for right attacking midfielders. So let's summarize the position. Oh my goodness, did I summarize on the left? I did not. So I'm going to go back and summarize the left attacking and then come back to the right attacking. So on the left, the variety of formations do call all of the positions we're combining into play: left wing, left attacking midfielders, and left forwards. However, the left wing position is sometimes played by the left back, and that's true on the right side as well. Anyway, in the World Cup, their 4-2-3-1 formation made this a left attacking midfield position. And on the left side in the World Cup, it was Musiala in the first game, or actually the first 2 games, and Gnabry in game 3. After the World Cup, Florian Wirtz immediately came into the role, and he was there at the beginning and at the end of this period after the World Cup. So currently he looks like the best candidate. Several players were tried out in the middle, and usually just once. So Musiala, despite playing it twice in the World Cup, was just tried out once here. Gnabry, Sané, and Gundogan all playing one game as the left attacking player. But Florian Wirtz looks like the candidate, although he does move over to the right and play in the center as well. Let's summarize the same position on the right side. So a lot of what we said for the left side is true too here. In the World Cup on the right attacking side, it was Gnabry twice and Sané once. And over the period since the World Cup, we do see some switching with Wirtz and Musiala appearing here as well. Sané, though, was there increasingly over the period until the last two games where Musiala started. So a bit of confusion, but basically those players, Sané, Musiala, and Wirtz, kind of make up the attacking midfield, and we'll see that shortly because we're moving on to the central attacking midfielder now. And we have a few players coded as attacking midfielder, Kai Havertz, but we're moving him to a forward position because that's the best place to discuss him there. Jamal Musiala is also coded as an attacking midfielder, but we talked about him when we talked about left attacking. And we also have Mario Götze on as seemingly off the squad here. He last appeared for the national team in 2023. So in fact, and Julian Draxler, hang on, he was off the squad before the World Cup last time, so we won't mention him here. So you'll see we have no candidates. We have no candidates as central attacking midfielder, and that's because the players we introduced already have been mentioned. So let's take a look. We'll go directly to the summary for central attacking midfielders. I'm just fixing up the graphics here, so sorry for the hesitations. Here's a summary of position. In the World Cup, it was 3 different players. Again, if we're thinking of the 4-2-3-1 formation, which it was in the World Cup, that is a central attacking midfielder there in that formation. It was Thomas Müller in the first game, Gundogan in the second, and then Musiala in the third. After the World Cup, the formations did not require this position very much. They did have one time where you arguably had 2 central attacking midfielders. That was played by Kimmich and Julian Brandt. So probably not as attacking as some of the players we're talking about here, more defensive players. But then we saw they returned in the second half of 2023 to the 4-2-3-1 formation, just like the World Cup. And it was the characters that we've already seen. So Wirtz, Musiala, Gnabry. And in the last 2 games, it was Gundogan playing in the central attacking midfield position. So there again, we see kind of a change in the last 2 games that we're not sure is going to stick going forward. Okay, well, cleverly using forward as a transition, we move on to our forwards. In fact, that didn't work at all because we have a secondary striker. So we'll deal with our secondary striker, Thomas Müller, a likely candidate here. And we'll introduce him. He's the only candidate here. 34 years old and has been with Germany since 2010 with 128 caps and 45 goals. And he's a veteran with Bayern Munich since 2008. And also, of course, a veteran with the German team, playing in every tournament since the 2010 World Cup, except for the 2017 Confederations Cup team, where we actually saw they brought a B team there. So a huge player for Germany, and he started 2 of their 13 games in the recent period, subbed in for 5, and on the bench for one, and he wasn't selected for 5 matches. But those were the first 5 matches after the World Cup, so he kind of drifted off the squad and then came back in. That has actually happened to him in the past as well. So Thomas Müller, more likely a substitute going into this cup, but nevertheless a likely candidate. Finally, we move on to the forwards, and we have Kai Havertz actually coded as an attacking midfielder. He's all over the place. We've seen him even as a left defender, but we're going to put him as a forward because that's the best place to discuss him here. That's where he's most often appeared. We also have, Kai Havertz should be second because he's a likely candidate. Oh, that's crazy. Anyway, I'll keep to what I got, a likely candidate. The definite candidate, though, is Nicholas Füllkrug, and then Kai Havertz, and then 2 possible candidates in Maximilian Bayer and in Dennis Undav. And then we have Timo Werner as a possible but unlikely candidate, but we will talk about him. And also Marvin Duksch as a possible but unlikely candidate. I'll deal with him now. He's been with the team since 2023 with 2 caps, but both of those were substitute appearances, and then he wasn't selected for the last 2 matches. So there's a possibility for him, but just possible but unlikely. And then we have a few players who are off the team. Karim Adeyemi. He was selected for the World Cup just on the bench, but he hasn't appeared for the national team since then, so he seems to be off the squad. We have Youssoufa Moukoko, also selected for the World Cup in 22, didn't see any action, but not selected since then. And Kevin Behrens. Kevin Behrens got his first cap in October 2023 and was subbed in for one and on the bench for one, but then not selected after that. So, sorry, I put the wrong thing there. So all 3 of those candidates seemingly off the squad. Karim Adeyemi, Youssoufa Moukoko, and Kevin Behrens. So we won't come back to them, but instead look in more detail at our main candidates, beginning with Nicholas Füllkrug. So he is relatively new to the team, despite being 31 years old. He got his first appearance in 2022 for the national team, and he has 15 caps and an impressive 11 goals. So, wow, not far from a goal a game there. Füllkrug plays for Borussia Dortmund since 2023 and was with Werder Bremen before that. And he was selected for the World Cup. In 2022, he was subbed into all 3 games there and even scored 2 goals. Over the last period, he started 6 of their 13 games, and he was subbed in for 5 and injured for the 2 others. So consistently selected by the manager. Next is Kai Havertz. Again, he's been all over the field. He's still young, 24 years old, but has been with the team since 2018 and has amassed 44 caps and 15 goals. And he's with Arsenal in England since 2023 and was with Chelsea before that, from 2020 to 2023. He was a starter in Euro 2022 and in the World Cup. Euro 2020 and in the World Cup in 2022, although he did lose his starting position after game 1 there. And he has since started 8 of their 13 games, subbed in for 3, on the bench for 1, and ill for 1 other. So I guess I have him as a likely candidate because he's only started 8 of their 13 games, but really he's probably a definite candidate, especially since he came on well for Arsenal at the end of the season. Okay, let's look at the two possible candidates. Maximilian Bayer is 21 years old. He doesn't have any caps for Germany. He's been with Hoffenheim in Germany since 2020, and he got his first appearance recently in March 2024. Didn't start either game there, but he was on the bench for both. So a possible candidate, given his call up so close to the cup. Next, we have Dennis Undav, also new to the team since 2024 with one cap, but a late bloomer. He's 27 years old, and he plays for Brighton in England, and was loaned to Stuttgart in Germany recently as well. He got his first cap for Germany in March, and didn't start either of the games, but was subbed in for one and on the bench for the other. So Dennis Undav, a possible candidate. Let's talk about Timo Werner. We have him as a possible but unlikely candidate here, with the team since 1996. What am I talking about? He was born in 1996, so he's 28 years old. And he has been with Germany since 2017. 54 caps and a healthy 24 goals for Germany, and with Leipzig in Germany since 2020, although he was loaned to Tottenham in 2024 for the second half of that season, and been with the team tournament-wise since the 2017 Confederations Cup. However, he did miss the 2022 World Cup due to injury, and he is an injury concern here. So he started the first two matches after the World Cup, and he was on the bench for the next one. But then he was injured for two matches and then not selected for the last 8. So it's not just the injury that makes him a possible but unlikely candidate. However, I do have him listed as an injury concern here, and I'll just check and see if I have a return date on that. Timo Werner, return unknown. So it's a thigh injury, and his return date is unknown. So we might have to wait until the part 2, the update podcast, or the update mediacast, to find out his fate. Although, as I said, it's not just because of the injury that he's possible but unlikely. He wasn't selected for the last 8 games, so a slight possibility of him coming in. And that is it. We are completed our look at the candidates. Again, I'm trying to make this a bit faster, so I'll keep the closing thoughts quite short here. Frankly, I found it baffling that Germany didn't involve themselves in at least some faux qualifying campaign and instead played friendlies. I just don't think that's the same. And especially with a new manager coming in, and we've seen the new manager all over the place in formations and in selections, especially for the first half since 2023, since the after the World Cup. It did seem to settle down in terms of formations after that, I'd say, for the second half of the period. However, in March of 2024, we saw a whole bunch of really abrupt changes, some of them even new players coming in, and really looking forward to see what it looks like in June of 2023. But it doesn't really bear well for the World Cup, because they look a bit disorganized. Having said that, they did going into World Cup 2006 when they hosted, and ended up doing very well. But I would be a bit worried as a German fan at this point. Okay, let's just preview part 2. So once again, when the final squads are published, oh wait, we have to do our quick run through of starters for the Cup. So let's go back over the list and see if there are any candidates that we can say that look like starters. Well, of course, Julian Nagelsmann, I don't think they're going to get rid of him shortly before the Cup, so we'll consider him a starter. Marc-Andre ter Stegen as goalkeeper looks solid enough that we can confidently say he'll be the starter. However, the backup keeper looked like it was going to be Kevin Trapp, and then he wasn't selected for the last two games. So one of those abrupt changes at the end there. So no idea who the backups are going to be. Central defenders, we can be pretty confident about Antonio Rudiger. A little less confident about Jonathan Tah, although that does seem to be the pairing that's quite consistent, and that wasn't something they adjusted in the March games. But I'm not confident enough. I want to be really confident to highlight players here. On the left back position, no, certainly not. We had David Raum, he was consistent in the World Cup, but Maximilian Mittelstadt suddenly brought in for the two March games. So no idea if that is going to stick or whether Raum will come back. Right back position, even kind of less certain because Joshua Kimmich is not always a right back, but has played there the most. And we have out of position players there, really disorganized. We can't nominate a starter there. In the central midfield, again, we might have nominated a couple of players who were rotating fairly consistently during and after the World Cup. But then in March 2022, suddenly it was newcomer Robert Andrich and Tony Cruz making a comeback on the team. So that leaves us baffled as to what's going on for the defensive central midfielders. Moving up to attacking midfielders, I think we can confidently say Florian Wirtz will start, not necessarily on the left because he does move over to the center and on the right sometimes too. So no for that. Jamal Musiala is an injury concern. We'll update that in part two. The right attacking side, Leroy Sané seems to be the most likely candidate, but then we had a bit of doubt at the end, and Serge Gnabry is also an injury concern. So really, we can't say anything with confidence there. Central attacking midfield, again, it'll probably be one of those players, Sane or Gundogan, who we could nominate as a starter, though not in any position. Gundogan and Sane, for example, could fit into that category. We just can't nail them down to a position. And then up front, Kai Havertz and Nicholas Fulkrug kind of look equally likely, but again, we can't confidently nominate any one of them. So just as I said, that kind of illustrates that things are very uncertain with Germany. Okay, now we can preview part two and sign off. So we're looking forward to the squad coming out and looking for what the final squad will be. When we do that, we will point out any notable non-selections and then any surprise inclusions, which could include some new players. And we will certainly give an update on injuries because there are some crucial injury questions on Germany that we'll hopefully have a bit more information on when we get to the part two. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for listening, and we will see you back when the squads are published. We would like to thank Mike Kripak, Big Sound Music, and Pixabay for the wonderful background music called Dance 90s accompanying this media cast.